Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hope. My name is Tammy Lynn Connors. This is my podcast and YouTube channel, helping other people evolve. Tonight, I have Gary with me. Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here, Tammy. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, I'm so happy to have you on. So, I met Gary through Instagram. I always like to tell people I meet people because it's God just like puts people in each other's lives for reasons.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, so I was on Gary's podcast last week and or a few weeks ago, I guess, and time goes so quick. But
Yes.
anyways, it launched today, and as we talked, I was like, I'd love to have you on Hope, and I'm so grateful that you agreed to be on here with us today, Gary.
Oh no, the gratitude is all. I'm grateful to be here with you. And yes, your episode launched today. I can't wait for everyone to hear it. It's an amazing, beautiful, inspiring story, and I'm grateful to be here with you.
Thank you so much. So, for those of you that have not listened to Hope or don't know what it really is what I did is I just started this podcast helping other people evolve to show people that they don't struggle alone. I feel like, especially since 2020, so many people are at home and they feel like they're all alone in their struggles. And unfortunately, so many people have gone through struggles like Gary and like myself and some other people I've interviewed. But fortunately, we've been able to get to a strength. And
Mm.
that's all this is about. Maybe you'll hear Gary's story today and it'll get you out of bed. Maybe you'll hear Gary's story and it'll get you outside just to know that you can get through. Honestly, you get through anything. Now, for my belief, it's in God, and I know that Gary's is too. And I always tell everybody, whatever it is that yours is, just please have that faith and know that you can get through anything. So, Gary's also in recovery, correct, Gary?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes, and you live in New York.
Yep. I'm in Long Island, New York. Born and raised Long Island, New York. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you've been a New Yorker
I
forever.
have. Yes, my
I've
whole
been a
life.
Michigander forever. So yeah. So Gary, I know that you said you've been sober since 2006. So
Yeah.
that's what, almost, geez, 17 years?
17 plus years. Yeah.
Yeah.
May 6th,
Wow.
2024, God willing, be 18 years. Crazy
Yeah, that's
day.
awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
I love short-term recovery because I know that they can get farther, but hearing long-term recovery, I think people need to hear that and know that, like I always say, Gary doesn't walk outside, I don't walk outside, and there's this great big bubble that God puts around us that says, we're going to protect you from everything. We
So
still have struggles, we still have life happen to us, but now we have the tools to get through those things. So Gary, if you could just kind of maybe share a little bit about who Gary was before recovery, and then we can get into how you came to recovery.
sure. Yeah. Wow, that's a good question. Who Gary was before recovery. I was talking to someone recently about, the identity I had when I was out there. I was, yeah, in all sincerity, my life is a complete 180 from where it was 17 plus years ago. And that's what you had said. That's what we see in here. That's what happens. That's what our community is. And to convey, and I love the title of your podcast and hope and everything that you're about. But we are a community of people that have been in really dark, bad places, right? And we've come out on the other side, and
Yes.
so can you out there, whether you have one day, whether you're contemplating it, whether you're in recovery early, whether you have long term. Like, it's amazing. I've been given this gift of, I'm 49, I'll be 50 years old in July. And maybe it's just stubborn me, but my best years are absolutely ahead of me. And
Mhm.
I never would have thought that prior, and so yeah, how did I get here? I was a sick kid. I started drinking, really early on. I had an active dad when I was young, really young kid. I saw things that, most, 8, 9, 10 year olds aren't supposed to be seeing. And, he was active and he had a habit in cocaine. And there was always some rough and tumble characters in and out of the house and seeing things around the house. And, and again, I saw things early, and I've learned this too in recovery, like the word like childhood trauma. Like, I didn't even know what that meant until probably this year, to be honest with you. It's been like
Right.
at the forefront since like I started my podcast and just, I guess, doing a little more research in a way of our, disease. But I was, I'd say I was alcoholic from the get-go. Like, I drank alcoholically, right from the jump. I think I started kind of normal, maybe a little younger than most people, 10, 11, 12 years old. And then you get to
Mhm.
junior high, you sort of progress a little more weekends. but I loved it. Hear all the things, it made me relaxed. It made me brave, all the fears and anxiety that I didn't know were fears and anxiety. And again, these are words that I learned in recovery. But it was all gone. It was taken away. And, I was off to the races early, but I also got in trouble really early.
Okay.
I was, I just not celebrated, but I had an anniversary Thanksgiving. I was 16 years old, the night before Thanksgiving, big night in my town. I think it's a big night in most towns. And
Yeah.
I was with some older cousins and they were telling me about, what a big night it is. And I was, they're older, they were 21, whatever, 24, whatever, how old they were. And I was just with them all day. We're drinking beers in the back seat. And I'm like, man, I want to hang out with these guys tonight. And long story short, I snuck in the bar that night and I hung out. And I was the youngest kid in this bar. And I knew everybody's, it's a real small town, right? And
Right.
fight breaks out, spills into the street, and my cousins are involved. I go out there and I was the smallest kid in the bar too by far, but I woke up Thanksgiving morning with a first degree assault of a police officer. Yeah, broke a
Oh,
cop's nose. Yeah. I mean, so I got in real trouble like right off the bat. Like I kind of like went from here to here, like 0 to 60, and
mm,
it kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Like, I was captain of my baseball team, and I had a lot of like, I love sports. It definitely got my, you can see in my background, I got
yeah.
sports pictures everywhere. But, I got in a lot of trouble, but the guys in town started looking at me a little differently in a way, but in a, like a respect, I don't know if respect's the right way, but they were like, oh, look at this. He's just, he's
Right.
all right. Like he's okay, and I started kind of hanging out with the older guys. And I just started going down, wrong paths kind of slowly. Again, I'm still young at this time.
Right.
But I was a kid, Tammy, when I was really young in grade school. I was one of the, this is just the truth. I'm being honest. I was one of the smartest kids in the whole grade. Like I was always like ahead as
Mhm.
far as academics. And by the time I mean, I barely graduated high school, barely, because I stopped going to school. Like I just, did everything was revolved around drinking, even at that age. And
Mhm.
fast forward a little bit, I never, applied to a college in my life. I went to one, I did go to junior college. I played at one semester baseball at junior college, upstate New York. It was a great year, but just like I did everything, I didn't go to school and all I did was drink and party. But I did what I loved. I had a abnormal obsession, or an alcoholic obsession, with drinking and partying. And I found a career that I thought was perfect for me, which was bartending. Go
Mhm.
shocker. So I was bartending out in Long Island at Montauk, which is a real fun summer place. I spent a lot of summers out there. But I came back, towards Long Island, where I'm from, and I was working in a local bar, and some guy came in and said, "What are you doing here? Like, come work for me in Wall Street." I was like, "All right, Wall Street, that sounds good." So long story short, here I am, again, I'm probably 21, 22 or so. And, I don't have a college, I have really nothing behind me, but, I go and take this test and I start working for like this chop shop type of, cold calling place, but I get my licenses. So I'm like, wow, I can maybe do something with this.
Mhm.
And, at the same time, I forget, well, I'm probably like 24 or something like that. And, I start dating this great girl, and her older brother works at a real place, or one of the big, bulge bracket Wall Street firms. He's a sales trader and an equity trader, and he gets me my foot in the door. And so, this is different for me. Like this is like, wow, I could, I have weekends off. Like I have,
Right.
there's an email address. They give me a business card. Like, and I was so lost. Like I didn't know like I remember I was left. I think I was answering emails in like caps lock. Like that's how like whacked it was. And I'm surrounded by like Ivy Leaguers, and so
Right.
yeah, and so that I land there on February of 2001, and I'm about a half mile or 5 or 6 blocks north of the World Trade Center in
Mm.
September. And
Okay.
I'm outside smoking a cigarette on September 11th,
Oh,
and we all know what happens. And
wow.
I see I see the planes, I see the buildings collapse, I see things again, people jumping. It's
Oh,
a bad day, right? And I always ask myself, like, it always comes up, like, because this is a thing that happened to all of us, right? This is the whole country. And yes, I was close to it, but it was the first time after that, like I didn't, I started to really not care. Like I always thought maybe I wanted a family. I was like, I don't want to bring kids into this world. I was really kind of in a dark place, like probably
Mm-hmm.
many of us were. But so I'm at this, again, my first real job. I have, I have benefits. I have, I have something to really maybe do something, a
Right.
little fish out of water, but I have a chip on my shoulder too. I got a little competitiveness to me, so I'm going to figure this out, and so like I said, I start there February. That happens in September, and I go AWOL from this job a few months after September 11th. I think it's April or March. I go. I went out with these guys on a Thursday night, and this is, I was really, this is how I drank at this point. Like, I graduated to go into dark places that I loved to be by myself, loved it.
Mm.
So
Okay.
my MO was like, I go out with a bunch of guys and then I kind of just Irish exit out and go do my own thing for the night. And so I went out on a Thursday night and I didn't show up the next day, didn't call or anything. And I knew I was in trouble but I was on a bender and I kept going out all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday comes, I can feel it's all coming down, it's all coming down on me. And I still don't call. I'm still at it. I think like in a way to escape, I just waiting for the bars to open and I go back in and I'm still on this run. And
Right.
finally Tuesday comes and I get kind of served in a way. It was FedEx to me. It was a letter. And I opened the letter and it was from the firm, Citigroup, and it said, Gary, if you're alive, you need to contact us. Otherwise, your job's terminated. We've been calling you. No one knows where you are. So I thought quickly on my feet and I called him. I said, yep, I'm alive. I'm here. I said, but I have a real problem. I have a problem in drinking and I need to go get help. And I'm
Mm.
trying to find a rehab right now. And this same girlfriend came and she started doing some research and she found a rehab for me. It was called St. Christopher's. It was upstate New
Okay.
York. They called it the Miracle on the Mountain. And it was a great place. It's an amazing place. But I wasn't ready. I went up there and I smoked, all I did was smoke a couple packs of cigarettes a day and, went through the motions. I read books, but it was the first time that I went to an AA meeting. It was the
Okay.
first time and I can meet it. I can remember it as clear as day, sitting in a circle and came around to me and it said, all right, you're up. And I said, I'm Gary and I'm an alcoholic. And I remember thinking, look what you did to yourself now. Look at where you are now. Like
Mm.
now what? And this is like the abbreviated version, but this is how I was. And I came out of that rehab. I kept the job. And I wasn't even able to put 90 days together. And I went back out, but went back off to the races. And I remember I was mentioning this to someone just the other day too. Like I got to a place where it's like, I don't care what side of this, team Gary you're on. You're either on it or you're off. And I really don't care if you're on it or not. And these are people I loved. And I
Mm.
was in just such a bad place. Like, this is who I am, and this is how it's going to go. And I'm going to burn out probably, but it's going to go up in flames. It's going to be fantastic, whatever. Just really dark, really pedal to the metal, bad stuff. And, I was in and out for 4 years, and you hear the term, a belly full of, a belly full of booze and a mind full of sobriety is a really tough place to be. And I did that for 4 years. And, I'm not sure what came over me, but I was sitting in my apartment. I was living in New York City at the time. I was in the West Village, great apartment, a little studio on West 12th Street. And I always say it was a Tuesday. I have to actually go back. Maybe I just say that because it was just such a nothing night. It wasn't some super low, but I was sitting in my apartment alone, drunk as a skunk. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. And
Mm.
in these 4 years, I knew that there'd probably be some time I'd have to stop drinking. There will be a time I have to stop drinking, but definitely not going back to those rooms. I'm not like those people. I'm not
Right.
going back to AA or anything like that. But I found myself the next day calling Intergroup, New York Intergroup, and I went to a meeting on May 13th, 2006, and I haven't had a drink or a drug since.
Wow.
And you know, like I said before, my life's a complete 180 from where it was. I had no idea what was about to happen. There's no big, I say this a lot if everyone's heard me before, but there's no big sign when you walk into a room, when you walk into a meeting or a rehab or wherever it is that says, come on in, you can completely change your life. And
Right.
that's exactly what happened to me. And that's exactly what I see happen to countless other people. And but I just went in because I didn't want to drink anymore. And it was a little different this time. Like when a stranger came up to me and said, "Hey man, how you doing?" My instincts are not to talk or share anything, but this here's my number, and you have to call me tomorrow. Like when everything inside me is like, get away from me. I was like,
Right.
I'm just gonna do what I'm told this time. Like these
Mm-hmm.
people are happy. I want what these people have. I tried it for years. In and out. Look where I am. I mean, there's been debacle after debacle, and you know, I was on a path, like everyone says, I was on a path of jails, institutions, and death.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not on
Yeah.
that path now. I'm on a completely different path. On a path.
Yeah.
I found a higher power, and I have God in my life. There's a lot in my life now, but I owe it all to sobriety, all of it, every single thing.
Mm-hmm. So, wow, that's an amazing story.
All right, I went
Really.
on a little tangent there. Sorry about that.
No, no, no. I loved it. That's what I love. No, I love to hear it. And the thing is that so I can say that I'm blessed. When I quit, right? It was one time the doctors told me I had pancreatitis, and
Mm.
they didn't really tell me to complete. They said you should probably lay off the drinking. That was probably what they said. And I did for a minute. I drank O'Doul's. But that was about it. I mean, I know it was a short span, but I do remember I got to go see Shania Twain for free because I was the
Ah,
DD. Yeah. So that was a benefit of it.
yeah,
But when I decided to get sober, that was it for me. I knew that I was going to die if I didn't, like I had said on your podcast. I know people have probably heard me say this before, but my dad drowned in our bathtub at 34 years old. Actually, it's 45 years ago today that he drowned
wow,
in the
my
bathtub,
gosh,
and I take his addiction in that as, I wrote a poem at 13 years old, like how bad addiction was in alcohol, and the fate of an alcoholic is death, jail, or an institution, right?
yeah,
And here I write this at 13 years old, and then there I was, that person, and so I think about my dad, and it's sad that he died at such a young age. I was telling my son today, because my son's 34 right now, and
yeah,
that's how old my dad was. And it's just, I look at my son like, you're so young. And my dad was so young.
yeah,
But through him, I learned what I needed to do, I guess. It was either die like him or get it together. So when I hear people talk about going back and relapsing,
mm,
I can't in my head imagine how that's got to be mentally to you, because it's almost like you got it and then you failed. You got it and then you failed.
yeah. And I've never put 90 days together. 90 days was always such a big number for some reason. I
Mhm.
actually not. I'm sure there's a really good reason. It's a big accomplishment. It is. It's something that, especially at the beginning, like
Right.
and from rehab till my sobriety date, I had never once put any
Mm.
real time together, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And I talk a lot about the trouble I've gotten. I got DWIs and multiple assaults. I've been arrested a bunch of times. And not good ones. Not like
Right.
I have the other ones too, a little disorderly conducts and whatever. But as a young man, like I remember sitting at my desk. Again, take away all the trouble. Take away after midnight type stuff, right?
Mhm.
I remember sitting at my desk as a young man, early 20s, and staring at my screen, talking to myself like, I'm not going out tonight. I'm not going out tonight. I'm not going out
Mhm.
tonight. Like all day, sweating, stinking of booze, and then 11, 12 o'clock lunchtime comes, you feel a little better, but I'm definitely not going out tonight. And I'm not going out tonight. And, you know, 4:30, 5 o'clock when I was dismissed, I went out, first one
Mhm.
out. And I was the last one to come home. If I did come home, it's like I
Mhm.
did it again. Like there's a passage, not to even talk about AA, but there's a passage in the big book about a jaywalker. And the jaywalker, like he crosses the street, he gets nipped by a car and goes to the hospital. And all right, don't do that again. All right. Well, the very next day he goes out and gets hit by a bus and goes back to the hospital more banged up. And he knows not to jaywalk. And the next day again, he gets hit by a truck. And it's like, what is your problem? Like, what are you getting at? I don't know. I just keep doing it. And
Mm.
I remember my girlfriend at the time, like I would just everyone, I was baffling everyone, including myself, but I was also the last one to either I was stubborn too. So I was either the last one to realize it or realize how bad I really was, or I just wouldn't even go there. Like I wouldn't allow myself to know. And, you know, when I was in sobriety early, I saw that passage. I was like, oh my God, like that's me. And I gave it to her and I was like, read this, like, see? And she's like, yeah, all right. Like that is you, like, sure. Like, and it's funny. I read that 17 plus years ago and I've read the book a bunch of times too. And that one really sticks with me because I can really relate to that, as crazy as it sounds, right? And makes no
Right.
sense. And you had said too, just, you were, I, I'm at that place, I think, where you are, where you just said, like, I'm terrified. Like, I don't know if I have it. Like, I have another go out into me, but I don't know if I have another come back in. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
if I have another recovery. So we talk a lot about fear, and
Yeah.
I probably the number one topic I speak with, all my sober buddies, and there's a huge group. And fears is probably the dominating topic, whether because you can put fear on so many different things. Fear of financial insecure. All my fears though are future projections, right?
Mhm.
But I have one. I think at least I say to myself, one healthy fear. I'm afraid to go back because and I've had moments where I'm like, how bad was I? Was I really that bad? Man, it's been a long time. I'm a different person now, like,
Yeah.
but I could play the tape in my head and, it, maybe it'll be the first one, maybe it'll be next day, maybe it'll be a week or month, but there'll be a time. It'll be probably a lot sooner than I think. This person right here will be right where he was 17 plus years ago. And that was a really ugly, bad place.
I had my one uncle. He was not much older than me. I think 7 or 8 years older than me, but he was sober for, I want to say 15 years. And then he went back out, and it was like you just said, it wasn't even a
Yeah.
week. It was like 2 days, and he was right back to where he was at.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah,
incredible. It's a disease. That's why, call it what you want, like whatever, you cross an imaginary line or whatever it may be. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I crossed it and there's no coming back for me for sure.
that's
I'm
it.
certain of it.
That's it. I since we're talking about like this, I want to read that poem that I wrote at 13, just so you can hear, and the
Please,
people
it would be an honor to hear this. Yes,
just
especially
to
on
just how
today. Yeah,
relatable this all is.
yeah.
So, like I said, I was 13. It was after my dad died, and it was called alcoholism. It says, at first you can handle alcohol. You have great fun. Yeah, a real ball. Then one day alcohol will control you, and there isn't a lot you can do. You try to overpower the urges, but eventually they become weekend splurges. It is amazing how it can control your life, even though sometimes it feels like you've been cut by a knife. Your entire family will suffer from alcoholism, but alcoholics always seem to have a reason. Someday you will hit rock bottom. When that happens, you're going to feel rotten. You will you will feel things won't ever get better. Most likely you will try to write a suicide letter. Hopefully your bottom will become before it's too late, because statistics show insanity or death is an alcoholic's fate. So don't think your mind can be at ease, because alcoholism is definitely a killer disease.
Yeah. I'm just blown away that a 13-year-old girl wrote that with such, I mean, nailed it. I mean, it's chilling, it is all of it. And you're reading it. I'm like, I can't believe you wrote this as a 13-year-old girl. It's really, it's, I mean, you had a good view of it clearly because you described it perfectly, all of it. Like if someone doesn't get it, read that poem. That's what
Right.
it is.
Well,
I'll have
and
you
then
buy
the
the book.
problem is there I went.
I was
I
the
flipped
same
it.
way, Tammy. Like I hated cocaine, like growing up. I hated it
Mhm.
because like I saw it and I was always afraid people knew. And, again, all these fears and anxieties, but I didn't know were fears and anxieties and probably reasons why I acted out at times the way I did, whether, altercations or fights or just, it's all fear based,
Right.
but I hated cocaine. And so when I started getting a little older, there was buddies starting to experiment, and I was like, yeah, not me. And like one day I did. One day I was like, yeah, let me try it. I'm ready, and it allowed me to drink longer. And so,
Mhm.
it got to a point where I still like had this, I still like kind of despised it. But like as soon as the first, after, this is a little later, but as soon as that first, drink hit me, I was like, all right, call them up, let's go, and
Yeah.
I loved it because it let me, like I said, it allowed me to drink more. But,
Mhm.
like you just said, this, and that's what happens in this disease, right? Like
Right.
your bottoms, there's always a lower bottom, and the bottoms could be moral bottoms, and you do things and you get more shameful. Thing for me, I'm speaking for myself, and you do things you always told yourself you'd never do or never
Yeah.
be, and then you go there or you do them like on a snap of a finger, and then you
Right.
say, all right, well, I'm not gonna do this or go there, and you find yourself in that spot, and it keeps
Mhm.
getting lower and lower, and but that's also in a way the beauty of our community is, and I love it. This quote, I forget. I think it's Joe Rogan's quote, and he wasn't talking about sobriety, but he's like, everyone likes a comeback story. Or some, I'm paraphrasing. Everyone likes a comeback story, but I really like a story that someone really messed up their life. They came back from that,
Yes.
and it hit me because I'm like, that's all of us. All
Yes.
of us have that. And I was on another show this week. I think it was Monday, and the gentleman was saying, he's like, the most strong-willed, like toughest minded people that I know by far are the people in sobriety. And
Mhm.
I never articulated it that way. I was like, well, of course it is, right? Like, even though I never like verbalized it, I was like, well, of course it is, because we've all been to hell and back, or whatever you want to call it. We've been through it, and we've come out on the other side, and now look what you're doing, right? Like, and we're trying to help people, like
Right.
my mantra, help one person every day. Like, that wasn't on my radar 17 plus years ago. Like, that wasn't part of, my daily
Right.
routine, if you will. Like, please, saying my prayers, start my day on my knees in prayer and gratitude,
Right.
thanking my higher power for everything that I have, thanking my higher power for my sobriety. And I close my day that way. It's not how I was living, you know,
Right.
17 plus years ago, and it's not how I grew up. And
Yeah.
so, you know, again, it's things I also been given this gift of like an open mind. Like, I don't know anything, like I don't know anything. And
Mhm.
when I think it's supposed to be my way and it doesn't go my way, that's my ego. And that's where I start going down, rabbit holes. And so
Yeah.
this, I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect, but I am aware of these things now. And I try to, do the, proverbial count to 10. Mine's more like a count to 2, but
Right.
you know what I mean? It's, like, again, I don't know anything. So it's just, you know, everything again, I say that because, now, like I said, I pray every morning, I pray every night, and gratitude. And, this wasn't on, like, this wasn't on the radar. This wasn't how I was living before. But, like I said at the beginning, I sincerely believe my best years are ahead of us. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's for all of us, and
Sure.
that's why this community of ours is, I love it. It's our tribe,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's amazing. You get to meet, and then this podcasting world, this Recover Out Loud world, which is fairly new to me, and get to meet new people like yourself and have relationships with people like you and see what you're doing. It's beautiful.
I agree. And one thing you said, ego. And I always look at ego as edging God out.
I knew you were going to say that because I've
Yeah.
seen that acronym before. I love it. Edge God out,
Yeah.
push him away, take my will back. It's
Right.
Gary. No,
Right.
it's not Gary's will. It's his
Right.
will.
Exactly. And I love the community too. And I love the recovery out loud because, for years it was, I get AA and Alcoholics Anonymous. I get the anonymous, but staying anonymous isn't helping people. You know what I mean? Like, people need to hear our stories because when you were talking about people in recovery, especially from alcoholism, and you know, I think of it too when we are the strongest people because alcohol's all around. I mean,
Yeah.
everywhere you go, there's alcohol, and I'm not disgrading any other addiction. I know there's food everywhere and all of that, but
Mhm.
alcohol is so like it's so great. Everybody's at parties and you have it at football, tailgate parties, and all of this. So it makes it look so amazing.
Yeah.
And for us, we know how unamazing it can be. And I do have friends that can just go have a beer
Right.
or a drink.
Yeah.
I'm not that person. If I was going to have a drink, it was at least a fifth, you know? So knowing that, and I just want to ask you if you think this way too, because this is a big thing I tell people, especially that are newer in recovery. And I just said this to somebody the other day that's newer in recovery. He's going to have a year in January. And I said, don't ever forget how sick you were and why you quit.
Mm.
And he looked at me and he's like, wow, that's so good. Because I think what happens is a lot of times we become complacent. And like you said, here
Yeah.
we are, I'm coming up on 20 years. I'm 20 years. I'm a different
Yeah.
person. Maybe
Yeah.
I could go have a drink, right? I don't
Yeah.
ever like that, but I'm just saying. But
Sure.
then I remember, like you said, how quick I'll go back to where I was 20 years ago. I never want to be there again, ever. I remember how sick I was. I remember the yellow bile. I remember the shakes. I remember looking in the mirror, not liking who I was and feeling worthless and hopeless and just like, ugh. And my life is completely a turnaround from that,
Yeah. No,
So,
to answer your question, I reflect an awful lot. And I really go, it's like the old line, right? Like, don't forget where you came from, right? Like,
mhm,
that's what that line means to me. Don't forget where you came from, because where I came from, where I again, just a really bad place, going absolutely nowhere really fast.
mhm,
And so I do reflect a lot. Yes, it's always like this, but through the years, I mean, throughout the 17 plus years, but lately, and I mean, like the last year or so, I've really been reflecting of where I was, like, I would always said this, like, I never contemplated taking my life. If this is what I always told myself. But
mhm,
as I got, in sobriety, I was like, there was a few times, and actually, I think it might have been one of the same, runs I was on. I was talking about it earlier. Like, I just wanted to lie I remember it pouring rain, and I just wanted to lie in the puddle in the curb, on the street, and I wanted a bus just to run me over. And I
mhm.
said that to like the wrong person, or the right person, I should say, in the last year or so. And they're like, well, just so you know, like, if you had shared that with someone, like, out loud, like, they would have taken you in, because that is, 100%, suicidal thought. Right. And,
Right.
that's where I was. And even as you were asking me, because I knew, asking this question of reflection, and where I was and where you were, like, that's where I was, so
Mhm.
it's like, that's the moment, and it's the other moments too. Like I said, like, again, forget about the past midnight moments. Like, a young guy in his 20s staring at a screen like that all day. I mean, if I'd never gotten any trouble at all, that's enough. That's enough
Right.
of the sickness right there. But
Right.
yeah, so I do. I do reflect, and
Yeah.
for
I always
sure.
say we don't live in the past, but I think we need to remember those places we came from.
Oh no, you can't
No,
live in the past. Absolutely.
no.
If I live in a past, forget it. I wouldn't grow.
Right.
There'd be no going forward. No, you can't
Right.
live in the past. But for me, that's the line. Don't forget where you came from, Gary.
Right.
That's what I
I
say.
like that. So now Gary has children, right?
Yes. Yes, I do. 9 and 10. Yep.
9 and 10 boys,
Girl and a boy.
girl
Girl
and a
and
boy.
my son's both
Okay.
9. Yeah.
Nice. So you
Yeah.
decided after the time that you didn't want to have any kids that we're gonna go ahead and do that.
Yeah, well, that same girlfriend that I had mentioned a few times,
Uh-huh.
is now my wife, and
Okay.
I love saying that. I think I probably say it every time I'm speaking with someone. She's now my wife, so she has seen all of it. She's been through
Mhm.
all of it. I There was a time where I lost that, and I never thought I was going to get that back. In fact, when this same time, when May 13th, there was something different. I knew there was a little bit different this time, but I was still so afraid I was going to go back out, because that's what I always did.
Mhm.
And I remember I just called her, and it wasn't to, like, get her back. It was just like, hey, I just want you to know, like, I've been going to meetings. I just feel a little different this time. And she was just so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
And, like, we, might have gotten just, hung out that day or so, or that night. And we very quickly got kind of reacquainted, if you will. And, she always saw something in me that I never did, and nobody else ever
Mm.
did. And,
Mhm.
I love to say this too, and the people have heard me, I've repeated this too, but as far as our children, she makes a big deal of my anniversary every year, and get a little Carvel cake and card. But on my 10-year anniversary, she wrote me, we had two little ones at the time, and she said, I'm just so proud of you. We're so proud of you. And, said, just think, if you didn't do this, if you didn't get sober, Lily and Finn wouldn't be here.
Mm,
And, that's so real for me.
right.
Part of me, like, there's a part like the ego doesn't, doesn't want to give all the credit to it, but that's not true.
Right.
You hear the line, like, I owe everything to my sobriety, like, property of my sobriety. Like, for me, that's everything. That's my family. That's nothing material. Although anything I do have, that's due to that too. But all the real stuff, the only thing that matters is
Right.
him and my wife and my two children. Those three, that they're my life, they're my everything. I do. I'm not here. I'm certainly not married and don't have any kids, that's for sure. And yeah, I owe it all to my sobriety. I do.
That's awesome. That's a great story. What a great story you have, Gary. You really do. I,
Oh,
I I think it's so awesome, and I'm just blessed that God like put us together like that. I say that happens, right?
yeah,
He just does it.
he does. And it's incredible. And I think we might have talked about this last time, maybe like offline, but the people that in our community, the people that I've met, while I started again, this like recover out loud, if you will, like
Hmm.
just so many, and there can't be enough of us. That's the
Right.
other thing. Like there can't, the more of us, the better.
Right.
Like if every
Yeah.
person is trying to help one person and we multiply that, that's a good thing. And that's a great day. So yeah, and you're so right. God work, it's all God's will, right? My
Mhm.
higher powers will. And everyone out there, it doesn't have, whatever you want to refer to him or her or the
Right.
universe, whatever you want to call it, there's something higher, there's a higher power happening here. And yeah, you and I connected, and, now we're good buddies.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I always tell people, once you meet me, that's it. You're my friend.
Well, that's easy. I know you're the easy one. I like to think I'm the same way. Not as good as you, but no, you've been as when we met, as soon as we started talking on DMs, it's like, she's great. Then we met, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to go on the whole podcast too.
Yes, it's so awesome that you got to be on here with me today. Is there like anything that you want to say to anybody? Little last words, little tidbits of like, I don't know, how to get through life a little bit.
Yeah, it's the reason why I started my podcast is, you know, you can completely change your life.
Hmm.
Like you can completely change your life ever you are, however young or ever old you are. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like you're not alone. Come on, give it up. Give it up. You change your whole entire life. And there's such a beautiful life for you on the other side. There really is. And that's how the podcast started. I just wanted to help one person, and you had
Mhm.
mentioned it, the anonymous thing. I think that's misguided. I'm not changing the way it is, but I hear too many, absolute amazing miracle comeback stories, and then like more people need to hear this, not just the people, the 20 or 30 people in this room that have heard it a bunch of times. There's people.
Right.
I remember when I was, I'll say this also, when I was that same girlfriend who's now my wife, I was really struggling, and she gave me this book. It was called Courage to Change. And in the book, it's all passages of like celebrities that have been sober.
Mm.
And, and it helped me. I remember thinking like, wow, like I think Pete Townsend was in it. Like they're in the book. I'm not giving up anybody's
Right.
name. There
Right.
was
You're
a bunch
right.
of
Right.
people in the book. And I'm like, it just opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, okay. Because I didn't know. You just don't know, especially when
Sure.
you're in it. Like you just don't know. And, you know, that's kind of where it sprung from. And so, yeah, that's the only thing it's the most important thing to everyone out there. Like you can totally change your life, and you don't have to live that way anymore. And it's a
Yeah.
beautiful way to live. And it's an
Yeah.
awful way to live before. So we've been through it, as well.
Right. Right. And it's so true. I remember when we were just talking about animosity again, just a little bit, but I remember years ago I decided to share my story like on YouTube or something. I
Yeah.
don't know what year it was, but I had a friend message me that was in the rooms with me, who unfortunately isn't in the rooms anymore. But he said to me, why would you do that? You're supposed to remain anonymous. Did your sponsor tell you to do that? And I was like, well, God is my sponsor. And
Yeah.
yes, he told me I should share my story. So it's just funny because, you know, it was like, don't do it. And I love hearing celebrities because to me, there's some strong people right there, especially when they're out entertaining like Keith Urban and these concerts
Yeah.
and all those things. And they're just happy being sober.
Yeah.
And when you
Right.
also said whatever age, so my sister, who's 53, yeah, she is celebrated, I think, 110 days now, maybe.
That's great.
Yeah,
It
she's
really
gained
is.
like 26 pounds. Like it's amazing. And to
Amazing.
see, she's been, you know, in, out, in, out, in, out. And we
Yeah.
talked to a lady the other day that's 10 years sober and she didn't get sober till she was 50, you know, and now she's living her best life. And that's when you
Yes.
said that it doesn't matter your age, you know,
Doesn't.
you just you gotta be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think that it does happen. And hopefully it happens to somebody before, you know, the death or the insanity or the jail.
Yeah,
That's,
because that's what we're dealing with,
mhm,
death, insanity, jail, institutions, losing your family, losing everything that you have. We
mhm,
see that too, right? And
yeah,
those aren't the awful cases, those are the normal cases,
right.
beautiful
Yeah.
family. Look, he or she lost their family because of this disease, and it
Mhm.
is a disease. There's no
Yep,
question about it. There's
exactly,
absolutely no question about it. So
exactly.
treat it like it's a disease, like, and the whole anonymous thing, like, it's and seeing all these celebrities, it's lessening the stigma. There still is, I guess, stigma. I
Mhm,
I was given, early. I think the first year I was just like, I feel like I checked out of like all my buddies and all that stuff. Like I just kind of checked out, and I feel like this is
mhm,
like this chunk of time where I like missed everything, but I had to, because I
right.
was so afraid I was going to go back out there. But
Mhm,
yeah, and these celebrities, they have the platform, and it helps, right? Like if you go see
yeah,
a movie and you see Bradley Cooper, I'm like, oh, that's my guy. He's one of my, we're on the same squad, like,
right.
and there's, you're going on 20 years, you said, right?
Yeah,
I mean, so that's what I mean. So you see these, and there's so many of them. There's so many. Anthony Hopkins. I mean, we can go on and on, but yeah, I think it's super powerful. I think it's super important, and again, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to help someone realize that, hey, you don't have to live this way anymore. You can totally change your life. You see
exactly.
complete transformations, and there's nothing that excites me more. Nothing at all.
I agree with you 100%. Well, Gary, thank you so much for getting on here. I will definitely, once we get this loaded and everything, have your links for your podcast on here because your podcasts are amazing. And it's such a blessing to meet you. And one day I'm going to come to New York and do a night of hope there. So we're going
You
to
promised me.
collaborate
You
there.
promised. Holding you to it. Yes.
Yes, for sure. So you guys all, thank you so much for getting on Hope. Like I said, you may be struggling, but you're not struggling alone. There's all of us are out here just to help you to get through your struggles. You can reach out to me, you can reach out to Gary. We're all here to help. And I just hope that everybody, I know the holidays are coming up, and for some people, the holidays are amazing. And for some people, they're hard. Just know that you can get through, and just make sure when you were talking earlier too, Gary, about the phone. I know that phone, if you go to pick it up, man, sometimes it weighs 10,000 pounds. But once you put it down, it only weighed 10 pounds. You just need someone to talk to. And there's so many people out there willing to pick that phone up. So, Gary, thank you again so much. And everybody, thank you for getting on Hope. Have an amazing day. Thank you.